Welcome to the SBCA podcast, Component Connection, where we explore the people, ideas, trends, and innovations shaping the structural framing industry. Regardless of how you touch this industry, we're glad you're here. Enjoy the episode.
Hello, I'm Molly Butz, Interim Co-Executive Director for SBCA, and with me today is Amanda Neuts, our Associate Director. And we'll be your hosts for this episode of Component Connection. Hey, Amanda, really looking forward to recording with you today.
Hey, Molly, me too. It was such a great day. I'm excited to talk about it.
Absolutely. So what Amanda and I would like to talk with you guys about today was our experience at the National Housing Supply Summit, which was just a couple of weeks ago in Washington, D.C. It took place at a really lovely building, the NAHB National Housing Center, and it was on March 18th. So a full day. We were there bright and early in the morning for coffee and snacks through about 6 o'clock at night. Amanda, I just kind of wanted to hand over to you and say, give me some of your thoughts about what we listened to that day and just sort of, your reaction to the event in general.
Yeah, absolutely. It was such a wonderful day, so much learning. As you know, Molly, and for the folks listening, I'm new to this industry, so I think a lot of my takeaways were a little bit more at the macro level, which I think will be interesting and play in probably really well to some of your thoughts too. But I certainly took a lot away. I was furiously taking notes and had a lot of things to think about and how we might apply them at SBCA. So I'll go through some of my highlights and my main takeaways, and feel free to jump in if it connects any dots or if you have any thoughts to add.
Sounds great.
All right. So my first thought was really around communication in general and something that really stuck with me around sell the opportunity. So this concept of sell the opportunity really stuck with me. And I think it may have been Jonathan Lawless from Built Rewards that described how listing 2 acres of land on realtor.com, let's say, isn't exactly sexy or appealing, right? You make the sale by showing a picture of a beautiful home on that land. You set the stage, you put yourself in the mindset of the person buying that land. You're selling the dream and really the possibility, the opportunity that land holds for the buyer. So it was really just a great reminder that framing and positioning matter and that we really need to keep our audience, whoever that may be, at the forefront of how we're communicating, really crafting the messages through the lens of that intended recipient. So that whole piece around communication just lit so many fires in me to think about how we communicate at SBCA, how our CMs are communicating to their audiences, to their industry partners, how we might work with our members on that and think about education around that. So really, I see that kind of lighting up in so many different areas for us. And I know we talked quite a bit about communication in our takeaways, so you may have some additional thoughts there as well.
I do, actually. I think that's a really great point. And it's the one that, we've been driving home for years, of course, which is this idea that components really are the best way to frame. And that's right, to a framer, to someone looking at it from outside, they might just think that, trusses and wall panels are just one more thing that they can be doing. But the idea that we're selling the opportunity to them, which is to build faster, to not have as much waste on site, all of those sort of framing the American dream concepts that we keep trying to drive home. There's a reason we do that, right? And this is exactly the reason that we do. And so I really like the concept that you can see that idea of communicating appropriately to sell the opportunity to people looking to be a part of the component industry in using our products is exactly what we need to be doing. And I think there are a lot of opportunities. One of the things that came up that I really liked was this idea of budget control versus budget reduction. And it was in relation to something else, but I really took that in as sort of the next part of what you're saying, which is that components really do give you that opportunity to manage your budget because you know what's coming in. You don't have to order more supplies. You don't have to have waste on site. You don't have to have any of those things. The product comes, you install them, and you're done. Yep. So that's a great example of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Another thought that stuck out to me, and again, being newer to this industry, was really around being localized. And I was reminded several times that building challenges often happen at the local level, which really sparked some ideas for me for SBCA's local chapters and new ways we might want to engage those regionalized groups. And so really some thoughts brewing there. What that looks like, I think could go in a lot of different directions, but definitely was good to start the conversation and a great reminder for me. And kind of tying into that too was around public and private coordination was really another common thread throughout the day, which again made me think both at the local level as well as at a broader scale about how we can work to better and more cohesively coordinate and cooperate with other players, both internal and external to our industry. We're really for the benefit of all of us. I know we chatted a bit about that, so I'm sure you have some thoughts to add there as well.
It was amazing to me. I mean, it's not that I haven't thought about all of these housing issues as being regionalized. We certainly have that in our industry as well, right? There are certain places where you wouldn't see a home being built that wasn't being built with trusses and wall panels. But to see just how distinctively some of the policies and some of the zoning issues that surround this really do become this absolutely almost like in the minutia of every different jurisdiction, which affects us as well, between building codes, which we talked about a lot that day as well, and some of the other different things that affect what kind of construction can go up, how big lot sizes can be, all of that. That was all really eye-opening. But I think what you really bring to light is a good point, that because of the regional nature of some of these things, our chapters are such a huge part of what we're doing. At the national level, we can see some of those little pockets of things and go and, say, go to Texas and talk with people about using more components or adding wall panels or whatever the case may be. Right. But the chapters have the people, the boots on the ground right there where we can be having those conversations real time, all the time. And so I think being able to bring that back and recognize how critical it is that our chapters get more and more robust, even maybe thinking about adding new chapters or reviving a chapter that hasn't been as active, could be a huge part of what not only we talked about that day, but just how we express our industry to everyone as a whole.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It made me think too, as we're getting our SBC PAC, our political action committee, up off the ground this year, and as we're taking in funds for there, how we can really use that both at a national level and a local level. And obviously we're just getting that started, but I'm really excited about how we can leverage that and really sort of plug that into some of our chapters and what that means for our members and how we're working with them and talking and communicating about all of that. So much more to come on that this year.
Yeah, especially with all the discussion that we had about policy making. It's really critical that we have a voice, not just at the local level, but at the national level. And I do think our chapters provide us with that opportunity. I can think back to sometimes when we had some chapters that continue to be very active and very vocal and having a voice in some of these places, understanding who their legislators are and having those conversations, building those relationships, right? This all really boils down to building relationships and having good communication with those people.
100%. Relationships and communication, I would say. It's great themes throughout the day, really, in every panel, and we can tie that in so many ways. So my next thought was really around research and thought leadership. And I was really excited to hear many of the presenters reference the research that they have done to support their work that they were bringing forward that day. And so, SBC has been part of research in the past. I know we've worked with Clemson University. I'm sure we've had some other partnerships before my time that I'm not even aware of, but I'm certainly learning about. But I can certainly see an opportunity to do more here and really parlay that research into industry thought leadership more expansively with the goal of broadening and deepening SBCA's reach and voice of the industry. And so, I know we're passionate about this and really finding new opportunities. We have a lot of ideas boiling already that we're gonna put into play this year and next year for sure. And I'm sure, Molly, you have some great thoughts around this as well.
Well, it does remind me, we've recently just restructured some of what Sean's doing for us, and really the big focus for him really turning to that relationship building. And I think, again, that is a huge piece of this that ends up parlaying into the research part of it, because knowing the people that have the data, that have access to the data, that can help us understand it and bring the various pieces together, right? Because it's not like it all just lives in one place and we can go to one book and find what we need. Right. There's so many different pieces. And one of the things I've really appreciated is the work that he's done to build those relationships and make sure that we have the people we can call on when we need them. Because you're right, this is going to be a really big part of the ongoing growth of the industry and the part of it that SBCA can help with most. And so I'm really proud of us for the work that we're doing there, and just the ability for our team to go out and do that, to make those relationships happen and then make that research come about as well, so that we can keep pushing everything forward. We're always talking about things like innovation. One thing that comes to mind is the white paper that Christine put together last year. Those are the sorts of pieces of like reports and white papers that are going to really help us speak consistently about these topics, but also, like you said, just push things forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad you brought up the data too. It segues well into my last topic. And not that this was my last takeaway from the day, because I could talk probably for an hour, but I also want to give you a chance to start some new topics. So everyone's heading on. So really the data, it reminds me of, the tech and AI speakers that we heard from, and really the reduction of friction in the industry. And so it was really exciting and inspiring to get a glimpse into how companies like ARCS and Infilla and others are leveraging technology to harness the disparate data sources that are available and really make them usable and accessible to both private and public sectors, right? Because that's a big deal. Like, there's lots of data everywhere, but what is the quality of that data? Is it actually usable? How can we actually turn that into action? And so the tools are here. It was really exciting to hear about the new and emerging tools that we have to ask ourselves constantly, how are we leveraging them to make our work and our life easier? And at SBCA, we want to continuously evaluate the tech that's available and how it may be applicable to our industry so that we can, offer education on that, whether that's at BCMC or through our own publications and media or potentially new forums. I know we're exploring webinars this year and partnerships and sort of new opportunities like such as that. But the tech AI pieces were really exciting. I mean, there's so much more than I know about. I'm excited to continue learning about them. And I'm sure you had some takeaways there as well.
Really, I had a lot that I wrote down about that. It has been a huge topic for us. And you're right. We're talking about it internally, but our members are talking about it and asking for more of it. As a great example, we have 2 different AI, a panel and a speaker coming up at our next OQM, really because it was something that was requested. So you can see what a deep hold AI has started to take in our industry. And I love that. SBCA is also exploring some AI opportunities in the next little bit as well. So I'm excited to be able to share about that as we get further into that endeavor. But I wrote down a lot about that as well. And I think, one thing that is really important, one big takeaway for me was the concept that good data isn't just good because it's from reputable resources. It's good when its limitations are clearly defined. One of the examples they gave was a set of data where it had been self-reported. Well, that's very different than if you're going in and actually looking at records for something. And I really liked the idea that they wanted us to think about how critical it was that the data was understood, not necessarily that it was just good data, that we understood where it came from and how to use it going forward. That same panel talked a lot about culture change as a result of what we're doing as well. And so I love that concept, especially when we talk about AI, because there are people on both sides of that fence very heavily. Some that are like, let's do it. They've incorporated it into their daily lives. And some that just have definitely put a wall up to the concept, don't love it, have a lot of concerns. And I think that there's room for people on both sides for sure. We need to be cautious about things and understand its capabilities, but also understand its limitations as well. But I agree with you. We need a new word. Everyone's like, oh, AI, it's a buzzword, but it's not really a buzzword anymore. It's really just part of our culture at this point. So that was cool that they had so much focus on that. And I'm looking forward to the focus that we can have as well, because it's not going away anytime soon. And so learning how to use it responsibly and for, again, just pushing things forward, making things better, and helping our industry become more innovative and more robust. And that whole arena is going to be really key. And so I'm proud of the work that we're doing to make sure people do have the education that they need to understand that. So yeah, definitely a really very cool part.
Love that you bring up it really is mainstream today. And I love that you bring culture aspect, because it's really about bringing people along the journey. Because as you say, there's a spectrum, and some people are awkward and ready to be part of, it's probably not even cutting edge so much anymore in a lot of areas, right? But it's still about, bringing the team on the journey whenever you're introducing something new, because we all have our own comfort levels and way we learn things and all of those elements that go into that give us, different levels of anxiety about adopting new technology. Sure. And so remembering that culture and putting that at the forefront I think is an excellent point.
One of the things that I really liked, there was a lot of innovative stuff, not just the AI. One of the other groups, there was a panel on innovative business models for rental and for purchase housing. And they talked about a couple of things I hadn't heard about. One was called pad split, which is actually, where you go and literally can put a room in your house up for, grabs, and then people could come and rent from you. That's a little scary to me personally. I like having my space. I'm not going to lie. Fascinating. And there were definitely some very excited people in the audience that hadn't heard about it and were raising hands to rent out a room right now. And another one was leaseholds, which is the concept that you own the building, but not the land that the actual building is on, that you would eventually pay off over the course of a few years, or up to, I think, 99 years is the limit. Those on their own may present some interesting ideas just for people to take in. But what I liked and my takeaway from that particular panel was the idea that we have to find space to trust new ideas. And I think that's huge for not only people that we're trying to influence to make decisions about using components, but also for our component manufacturers and suppliers to think about innovation and how they're going to innovate their businesses or new products or services that they're going to bring to component manufacturers. This idea of trusting new ideas is really big. I think maybe even personally to think about that when we're up against something that we're not sure about, like let's just trust it. Let's give it a shot, and AI falls into that category as well. But that was one of my fun takeaways that I remember. I was like, ooh, exclamation point. This is a cool idea. So
yeah, absolutely. I agree. That was a really interesting panel and brand new ideas to me to learn about as well, and interesting concepts. And I love your takeaway. And the thing that I had written down about that panel as well was do more with the existing spaces.
Yes.
What more can we do with what we already have? Which is not a new concept, but it was an interesting reminder and a different way to think about that, whether it's physical space or just in general, doing more with what we have, thinking creatively. And I know that, the the coin term thinking outside of the box, I feel like is a little oversaid and overplayed a bit, but it is that idea, right? How do we continue to infuse creativity in what we already have and think differently about things? So that was definitely a fun one.
I think one of the things that we keep saying, we've said for a long time at SBCA, and I think it's important to keep reiterating, but I heard it a lot that day, is the idea, there were a lot of good ideas. This is a good idea. Pad split's a good idea. Doing more with what we have is a good idea. These are all wonderful ideas. And the reality is that we need all of them. This isn't a one answer solution. The final panel that day was actually a recap, like a recap and react panel, which I'd never seen done before. I thought it was a fascinating concept. So the folks there had just been tasked with listening and taking good notes all day. They probably knew the questions that she was going to ask, so they could kind of, prepare some answers to those questions. But one of my favorite line items during that was that we need to operate as a system, not silos. So that kind of takes us all the way back to where we started from. This just isn't a one answer problem. It's an opportunity for all of these different groups, all the groups we saw that day, all the groups we get to work with in the component manufacturing industry to come together to be the solution. We need different kinds of construction. We need component manufacturers. We need, all the people that do the different things. We need AI. We need all the tech. We need that. This is a group effort. And the better, this goes back to exactly what you said. It's all about relationships and communication. And the better we can do that, the more we'll be able to come together and find that synergy to make it happen as a team instead of we're better at this or you're better at that. No, we have to be, this is everybody in the pool at the same time to get the job done.
Absolutely. I think you said it so well. In collaboration, cooperation, all for the greater good, the benefit of all, let's not feel so siloed. Let's work together to really make this better for all of us in the industry. So partnerships, everything, I think it sums it up so well. So many wonderful threads throughout the day that really, we could say how this related in almost every single panel and take away, major points from them. And I feel like it's critical. It's critical for us all to remember in all of our communications and partnerships.
Absolutely. I think if you're looking for an interesting way to spend a day, a very intense day with 8 panels and a couple of speakers, including an econ forecast and John Gibbs, who also spoke that day. Yeah. It's a wonderful way to immerse yourself in a little different side of our industry, but also look at all the takeaways that we had that really just applied directly to what we're dealing with every day at SBCA with our component manufacturers. I think it's a really wonderful opportunity that if you're looking for something fun to do, it's definitely a great day.
I agree. I enjoyed it so much. I'm so glad I had the opportunity to go and that we were able to share in that experience together and see what we can do to take some of these ideas forward for both us as an organization at SBCA and for the industry as a whole.
Awesome. Amanda, thank you so much for getting together with me today to talk about this. And thank you all out there for listening to SBCA's podcast, Component Connection. If you enjoyed this episode and found it valuable, please like it and share it with others and stay up to date and in the know by subscribing to Component Connection on whatever podcast platform you use most.
Thanks for listening to Component Connection, brought to you by SBCA. If there's a topic you'd like us to explore in a future episode, email us at podcast@sbcacomponents.com.